Let me tell you what happens when you do everything right. You skipped the dealership. Didn't sign up for an $80,000 truck with a touchscreen that'll brick itself in 4 years. You found a clean pre-emissions workhorse, iron block, real frame, the kind of engine a guy in a flannel shirt can fix by lantern light if he has to. You did the delete. Pulled the EGR, gutted the DPF, maybe threw on a mechanical injection setup that doesn't answer to a single sensor on the planet. That truck runs stronger than it ever did rolling off the assembly line. Then you drove it to get inspected. The tech didn't even pop the hood. Just reached under your dash, plugged in a scanner, and waited. Except there was nothing to talk to. No ECU. No module handshake. No emissions brain. He tore off a red slip and handed it to you without blinking. Failed. One scan. Your whole setup, the one that actually runs clean, is now a 4,000-pound parking lot decoration. But mechanics are a specific kind of stubborn. They found the doors the law left open. And today we're walking through every single one. First, you need to understand what flipped in 1996. Before that, an inspector shoved a probe in your exhaust pipe and measured actual output. Pretty simple, what comes out, pass or fail. Congress changed all that when they mandated OBD2 ports on every vehicle sold in the country. The test stopped being about your exhaust and became about your computer. The inspection machine now interrogates your ECU directly. It wants to know if your DPF is bolted on, if your EGR has run its cycles, if every single mandated piece of hardware is sitting there reporting like it should. Deleted truck means no ECU to answer. Your VIN gets flagged before the tech even looks up. You can't tune around it. The machine isn't guessing. It knows exactly what answers it's supposed to get. Now here's something people with money figured out a long time ago, and blue-collar shops quietly figured out after them. Drive around any major city and count the Ferraris with Montana tags. The owner doesn't live in Montana. He formed a business entity in a state that doesn't care, sold the car to that company, and now drives it on plates from a state that never touches an OBD2 scanner. That strategy was originally built so millionaires could dodge sales tax on exotic cars. It turns out nothing in that structure requires you to be rich. The loophole doesn't check your income. It checks your registration. Loophole 1. The Montana LLC. Montana doesn't run emissions tests. No OBD2 plug, no safety sniff, nothing. You pay a registered agent up there, usually somewhere between a few $100 and $1,000 a year, to set up an LLC in your name. Then you sell your truck to that LLC. It's now a corporate vehicle. Montana plates go on the bumper and that truck becomes, legally, a fleet vehicle registered to a business in a state that has zero participation in the emissions inspection network. The county EPA office where you actually live has no authority over it. You disappear from the system entirely. If running a corporation sounds like more paperwork than you want, South Dakota keeps it even simpler. Non-residents can register a vehicle there without ever physically being in the state. You mail the forms, use a forwarding address, pay the fees, and they mail you the plates. South Dakota doesn't test emissions either. No annual LLC fee. No corporate structure to manage. If you want an out-of-state plate without the business overhead, this is the path. Third option, and this one's sitting in your own backyard, is the historic vehicle exemption. When they wrote the OBD2 rules, lawmakers pictured 25-year-old vehicles as show cars that came out twice a year for a cruise. So they exempted them. They did not anticipate what American mechanics would do with that exemption. A 1999 Silverado isn't a museum piece. It's hauling lumber to a job site right now. But the year 2000 is more than 25 years ago. That means the OBS Chevrolets, the 2nd-gen Rams, the 7th-gen F-Series, they're rolling off the emissions clock one model year at a time. Get the antique plate and the state stops looking under your hood forever. Fourth, farm tags. In most states, a heavy-duty truck registered as farm equipment is classified the same as a tractor under the law. Tractors don't get OBD2 inspections. The trade-off is legitimate. Farm-tagged vehicles are restricted to agricultural use, not daily highway commuting. But if your deleted diesel's main job is hauling hay or dragging a horse trailer around the property, a farm tag is a permanent exemption the inspection system can't touch. Now, something broke in late March 2026 that every diesel owner should have heard about by now. March 27th, The EPA released new guidance that removes the DEF sensor requirement for diesel equipment across the board. EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin said publicly that the urea quality sensors, the components monitoring diesel exhaust fluid in SCR systems, had become a nationwide disaster. These things had some of the worst failure rates of any mandated emissions component on the market. Functional trucks were shutting down on the highway because a bad sensor threw a false code. The Small Business Administration put the cost to farmers alone at $4.4 billion a year. The new guidance lets manufacturers replace those sensors with NOx sensors that measure actual tailpipe output instead of interrogating the fluid tank. It also clarifies that approved software updates can go on existing engines without being treated as illegal tampering under the Clean Air Act. Be clear on what this doesn't change. DEF is still required. SCR systems are still mandatory. Emissions standards didn't move. What changed is the monitoring method. But this is the first time in over a decade that the federal government has stood up and said the mandated hardware was itself the problem. The dragnet on deleted trucks is still running. But the wind shifted a little. Before you order Montana plates, hear the downside clean. California, Colorado, New York. Several states have active tip lines now. Neighbors call. Parking officers flag. If an investigation determines your Montana-plated truck is garaged in your driveway every night and owned by an LLC you've never flown to visit, you're looking at fines, back registration fees, and a forced re-registration in your home state, which puts you right back in front of the OBD2 scanner. There's also an insurance gap most people don't think about until it's too late. A truck titled to an LLC is legally a commercial vehicle. Your personal auto policy doesn't cover it. If you wreck it on a personal policy, the insurer finds the registration mismatch and denies the claim. The loophole works, but only if you actually run the full structure. Real commercial auto policy. Real discipline about how you use the truck. The regulators frame all of this as air quality. But the OBD2 system doesn't measure your air quality. It measures whether the parts on the manufacturer's list are bolted on and reporting. A tuned deleted diesel can fail the test. A stock truck burning 2 quarts of oil between changes passes, because its ECU gives the machine the answers it's programmed to want. This system protects a parts list. A DPF filter that costs $2,000 to replace and fails in 5 years. That's what it protects. The resistance isn't going away. Montana still issues plates. South Dakota still mails registrations to people who've never been there. And every year, another wave of the best trucks ever built crosses the 25-year line and walks out from under the inspection system forever. If you've run an out-of-state plate, an antique tag, or a farm registration on a deleted truck, drop it in the comments. Hit subscribe. We'll see you in the next one.